Howdy folks. Tell me to rotate device. I don't know if I want to. I want to film it in portrait. But if I look upside down then alright. I'll do it just for you. I'd set up the laptop and everything because I was gonna just do another debunking, only because I'm a little bit bored, you could say, with arguing with globetards. Now I'm not so sure if it will work because I'd work this out so it would film the laptop, because I'm going to put camera on the laptop and just go through the video and, you know, listen to their argument and then debunk it. The weird thing is I couldn't even find the actual one that I wanted to debunk, because I saw another link to it today. I have debunked it before, you know, the top 10 reasons that the earth is round, and I thought I'll do a proper debunking rather than have to film it, you know, really stupid and using the stupid phone, which now is giving me the shits and won't work as a proper filming device. I thought I'd do it live, that way you can see me debunk as we go. Anyway, that's obviously going to be a little bit more tricky. I'll turn the camera around shortly and try anyway. Obviously I don't have a microphone. In the meantime I might just sing a song just to introduce and see if anybody's going to come along that wants to talk. Somebody is there, I think. It says somebody's there. G'day. Anyway, I'm just going to botch up a song first, and then I'll get on to debunking the one that says 10 things that would happen if the earth is flat. Not the one I intended, but can't find it. Someone's come, someone's gone. Very good. Hope it's in tune. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while, and though your dreams may toss and turn you now, they will vanish away like your dad's best jeans, denim blue, fading up to the sky. And though you want it to last forever, you know he never will. Never will. And the patches make the goodbye harder still. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? There'll never be a better chance to change your mind. And if you want this world to see a better day, will you carry the words of love with you? Will you ride the great white bird into heaven? And though you want to last forever, you know you never will. You know you never will. And the goodbye makes the journey harder still. Of love with you, will you ride very young, what will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? Okay, that's a warm-up. Get the old throat going. Alright, well nobody wants to chat, that's good. I might have to sing another one. Or I might. I'm going to go straight to the video instead and see how this works. I've never done this before, so once again, all experimental. I'll see if I can make it full screen first, so you won't see billions of open tabs. There we go. I'll put the camera around here. Yeah, see, I had it all sorted out for portrait. I wonder if it'll zoom. It does zoom, but anyway, hopefully you can see that at about the right height. Get over that way. I have to do. Such is life. So let's see how we go with debunking 10 things would happen if the Earth was flat.
After you got done wondering how anyone could possibly believe the world isn't round, you probably wondered what would happen if the world was actually flat. Well, wonder no more, because we'll explain what a strange and different place the world would be if it was flat instead of spherical. There's no getting...
Did you see that? Oh, jeez, I'm going to move that a bit. See if I can pause it.
Different place the world would be if it was flat.
See, that's how they depict the flat Earth. Not a single flat earther who genuinely knows what they're talking about, which the vast majority of us do because we've actually looked into this. Not a single one of us imagine the flat world looks like that. Some disc floating in outer space. That is absolute complete and utter nonsense. A psyop. See, that is the psyop, not that real flat Earth. The one that says everything finds its place according to density and buoyancy, vibration and frequency, and everything seeks its own level according to its vibration. And that's why things physical at the very bottom of the universe. I mean, it may get a bit more dense further down, but we believe the physical plane is an infinite bottom of everything, and that the lights above us are lights above us because they're not dense, they are lights. Things in air are able to hang around in the air, like clouds, for example. Like, yeah, you can see a cloud there, but to think there's planets and stars and shit underneath us, sheer ludicrousy. So you've already started off by showing that you don't even understand what you're trying to debunk, that you're part of the psyop, and that the truthers know what's going on.
Instead of spherical. There's no getting around hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notifications if you want the latest content from the richest. Hola!
The richest.
Did you hear about the latest addition to our family? The Richest Espanol is the perfect place for all you native Spanish speakers out there. Don't speak Spanish? No problem. Come on over. This is the perfect place to practice.
Psyop within a psyop.
Amazing facts, interesting people, and funny pictures.
The richest sounds a bit like the Rothschilds.
No, we aren't talking about the Sandra Bullock vehicle.
Gravity.
Here. We know how gravity behaves on a round planet, but things would remarkably different.
Hey, look, it's an astronaut.
Flat. Gravity likes to pull things toward the center of the Earth. So everyone on the sphere...
So you're saying, they say gravity likes to pull everything towards the center of the Earth. That is bullshit. Because never once does anything drop at any sort of angle whatsoever, which matches with the fact that curvature can't be seen. Everything just drops straight down.
Experiences gravity pretty much the same, since we're being pulled towards a common core.
No.
However, if the planet was flat, gravity would affect you differently depending on how close to the edge of the planet you were.
Listen to this.
Even if the Earth was flat, you wouldn't have to worry about tumbling off the side because gravity simply wouldn't allow that to happen. As you neared the edge of the planet, gravity would weigh you down as it pulled you to the central point of the planet.
Unbelievable.
So clearly, if we assume the Earth is flat, that means that everything we think we know about gravity is incorrect. The fact that...
Well, everything you think you know about gravity is incorrect because you're saying it's pulling towards the center of a ball for no reason other than the fact that you say there's ball has so much mass that everything's attracted to it. I mean, far out, we all want to hear the fat lady singing, but we aren't attracted to her. And yet in your description of how gravity works, everything's attracted to her, all proportionally towards her center for some reason or another. None is actually given. Like, you'll say it's got a magnetic effect, and yet anything metallic doesn't stick to it. Anything non-metallic doesn't stick to it. You can lift up anything, which you can't do as opposed to a piece of metal stuck to a very strong magnet. You have to apply some amount of force to really pull that off. So Earth obviously has no magnetic attraction. There's got no particular attraction of mass, because if it had attraction of mass, which is the theory of gravity, then things, say a 10,000 pound lead ball, would drop incrementally faster than a tiny little marble dropped at the same time next to it. Yet experiment after experiment has shown they all fall at the same speed. They hit the ground at the same time. There's no attraction of mass. That's all a big fat lie. And you can clearly see how it is density. They're falling through the rate of the density of air. Air is the medium through which they're falling. That's why they fall at the same time. Now we know that a feather has air resistance. It's what we call, has some amount of buoyancy within air. So when you drop a feather in air, it will waft down. Sometimes it might even get picked up a little air current and go up again. So it has buoyancy. But if you drop it in a vacuum next to a bowling ball, the feathers fall at exactly the same rate as the bowling ball, which means you've removed the density of air. So you're in a density of nothing, nothing to resist. Everything falls at the same rate. So to say that gravity is an attraction due to mass is a big fat lie.
That we are alive, our planet is functioning, and we aren't all floating away into space shows that either the planet is spherical and functions the way we think it does, or it's flat and we've got gravity all wrong.
That's right, you do have gravity all wrong, because there is no edge. You started off on the false premise, and you're going to continue on a false premise, because to say that if you did somehow swim to the edge, climbed the ice wall, walked over thousands of miles of the highest mountains in the world in the freezing cold, somehow managed to do that and found an edge, all you're going to find is more ocean on the other side anyway. It's just ridiculous.
Spin the switch. Okay, so what would happen if the Earth suddenly turned flat? In addition to having to redo all of our maps and globes, we would be in a heap of trouble, to put it mildly.
Well, that's true, because the maps are all done wrong in the first place. Let me see if I've still got it right here next to me. I don't. But we all know what a compass is. We know that a compass is a drawing instrument to make circles. And so the way that the first maps were ever drawn was using the magnetic compass to point towards a familiar center, the North Pole, which just so happens to align perfectly with Polaris, the North Polar Star. And so that as they measured away from the North Pole, that they used a compass to draw a circle, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger circles away from the northern center, until suddenly they reached this place called the equator. And this is where we have people like Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, oh, go away, I don't need to hear that right now. Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that things go pear-shaped below the equator, even though they say there's no up and down in space. He uses the word below the equator, whereas we know in reality that once you start going outside of the equator, you can no longer use the same instruments, the compass, to draw circles in ever-increasing circles to remain accurate, which is why all maps are wrong. They're all done on a flat sheet of paper with ever-increasing circles, which are called your lines of latitude. Even longitude is kind of goes all skew with because it's all done according to the North Pole. Whereas in reality, even though the magnetic compass might point towards the North Pole, it's still not an accurate reflection of where things really are and how they really sit in the real world that we know of. So the best we have at this stage is still the azimuthal equidistant map, which shows everything still centered around the North Pole. Eventually we'll get a better understanding of the map, but at this stage, because it's all done according to the false belief that we're on a globe, simply because it worked really well for the Northern Hemisphere to keep drawing everything in bigger and bigger circles coming out from there, means the whole southern side beyond that is completely wrong and will remain wrong to this day because it's all based on the false assumption from hundreds of years ago that we live on a spinning ball.
Our spherical planet, heat and radioactivity can be concentrated in the core of the Earth, safely away from us humans, who live on the crust. However, if the Earth was suddenly to get squished flat, well, that heat and
Heat rises.
radioactivity has to go somewhere, and that would likely be a lot closer to the surface, which would be bad news. Not to mention that to force the Earth to become flat and remain that way, you have to flip the giant anti-gravity switch. That would have the teeny tiny side effect of ripping away our atmosphere and then causing all of us to go hurtling into space. This sudden...
Well, let's stop that one there. Well, here's a funny thing, isn't it? Hitting an anti-gravity switch and watching our atmosphere hurtle off into space. Gravity is what you base all the beliefs on. Every single one of them only works because of gravity. That's the only reason we have an atmosphere at all. You say that even air has a slight amount of mass, therefore gravity holds it to us and makes it move at incrementally faster speeds the higher up it is, so that it appears to remain relatively motionless depending on your local winds blowing the clouds around, but they're all magically clinging to us because of gravity. Yet, you also say that gravity, being the attraction of mass, which I've already just proven wrong, completely false in every sense of it, it gets weaker and weaker the further away from the center you go. Yet air itself gets lighter and lighter the further away it goes, less and less dense. So gravity would have even less effect on it the further up or higher it goes away from the surface. Therefore, it would immediately fill the void of space far more readily than it would cling to the Earth as though the Earth was stationary and it was somehow just clinging there due to being pressurized some way. And well, that just explains the flat Earth beautifully, doesn't it? If the Earth is still, then everything finds its place according to density and buoyancy. The lighter gases will rise higher up, and they will appear to be perfectly still because we're not moving faster than the speed of sound beneath them. The whole concept of a spinning ball in a vacuum is ridiculous. The Earth's surface would resemble that of the Moon in a nanosecond. I'd go back to the Moon in a nanosecond, but we destroyed that technology and it's a painful process to build it back again. Forrest Gump got
would
taken
also
out
do
of
a
a
number
job.
on the surface of the planet itself, causing enormous rifts and edges to form and making the landscape look nothing like it does now. Just think of how the peel of an orange looks before you start tearing into it, and compare that to what it looks like once you're done removing it from the fruit. Plate tectonics. So assuming a flat Earth,
What?
clearly the world always has
I gotta watch that
been
again.
and
Sorry,
it does now.
I missed that.
Just think of how the peel of an orange looks before you start tearing into it, and compare that to what it looks like once you're done removing it from the fruit.
What the hell has that got to do with anything? Holy shit balls. I mean, okay, yeah, maybe that's how they've done their map. So it works when you put it around a globe, so therefore the distances are correct. But because they've spread it out now on a flat sheet of paper, a flat surface, that's how they're making it look, so that the distances between the southern continents is exaggerated because they're doing it to conform to the globe map. Whereas in reality, they're still just as tightly close as they really are. Something to think about.
Tectonics. So assuming a flat Earth, clearly the world always has been and always will be flat.
Okay, let's do that, but let's not look at your psyop view of it again, of a disk floating in space. That is ridiculous.
Means that in addition to being all wrong about gravity, we have a lot to learn about plate tectonics. Right now, we believe that plates in the mantle of the planet shift, moving the continents about 1.2 inches per year,
That makes no
which is about how
sense.
fast your hair and fingernails grow. We track this using satellite imaging and various sensory equipment, but somehow we've clearly got this all wrong. A flat Earth would be stationary, and we wouldn't see new mountains like the Rockies forming on land or witness trenches forming in the ocean.
Well, okay, that's true, because we've never seen it. We've never seen mountains like the Rockies form. The best understanding that we actually have of the formation of mountains is that there once existed giant trees and they got destroyed, quite possibly, or probably, more likely, either by natural causes, as happens in many places, or by actual giants, because they've cut them off clear across the top, as we can see in the formation of mesas, which are all over the world. There's many examples of completely, perfectly flat-topped mesas or mesas, however you like to pronounce it, often with their own springs of water rising up through them, exactly as you'd expect a tree might have had through the capillary action of its inner cells at one stage. And the formation in those hexagonal formations that you see everywhere. And even so, when you don't, I've been doing a lot of driving around here in Australia and observing the formation of mountains and the crumbling remains of them, and they all resemble these upright structures, exactly what you'd expect to see from the remains of fossilized trees. So if our entire Earth was once covered in them, and we're now living in the slowly ruined, crumbling remains of it all, that's really what we're seeing. We're not seeing plates running into each other like they show with their cartoons just now. We never see anything like that. I mean, look at this. How does this make any sense? Look at that. Like this one here. It just stopped here to let this one slide under it. That makes no sense. No, they'd be crashing into each other and pushing up the mountains in the middle. Look how they show it.
About 1.2 inches per
Ridiculous.
Year, which is about how fast your hair and fingernails grow.
Absolute nonsense. That there would be crashing into it just as much as this is crashing into it, and that would push your mountains up if it formed that way, which it doesn't. And I've got something to say about that in a moment too.
We track this using satellite imaging and various sensory equipment, but somehow we clearly got this all wrong.
And various sensing equipment. Did you hear that? Let's go through that again.
We track this using satellite imaging and various sensory equipment.
And various sensory equipment. Satellite imagery, which, okay, we've never seen any real photos from satellites. Everything shows the Earth to be flat and stationary from up that high. They're even showing them going in these lovely sine wave formations, as though that proves that Earth's a spinning ball somehow. But other sensory instruments. How interesting.
But somehow, we've clearly got this all wrong. A flat Earth would be stationary, and we wouldn't see new mountains like the Rockies forming on land or witness trenches forming in the ocean. Oh, and you know how we mentioned all of that heat and radioactivity being closer to the surface of a flat Earth? That means that we would see an increase in volcanoes and heat on the surface. This would likely be so extreme that the water in the oceans might simply boil away.
Well, what? See, this is fun because I've never actually watched this one before, unlike the other one I was going to debunk. How do you get to rewrite the rules just because you've understood them based on your globe Earth physics in the first place, when you suddenly realize that, yes, it is actually flat? It doesn't mean anything changes from what we've been observing for century after century after century, and what we know to be true, what we know to be observable about everything we see with physics and volcanoes, the way they work under oceans and everything. And because we've never said we're in outer space, as you keep trying to claim, our oceans would never boil off. If they did boil, they'd just coagulate into steam, form a shitload of clouds, which would cool us down anyway because it would block the sun, and they'd fall back down as rain. It would cool down, and so if you could somehow boil off all the oceans, as a ridiculous thing to think in the first place, it would just quickly recover itself anyway, because that's what nature does. This is just ridiculous, the sort of fear mongering you try to put into our heads in order to reinforce your global lie.
Which isn't exactly conducive to happy and healthy lives for living beings on the planet. Horizon,
Oh,
gazing into the ocean and watching ships
flat as flat.
slowly appear over the horizon can be a beautiful sight, but it's something that wouldn't happen if the Earth was flat.
There we go again,
Surprisingly,
more
your
psyop.
day-to-day life wouldn't look that different if the Earth was flat, because the curvature of the Earth is something that we can't discern. Not
Exactly.
because it's flat, but because it's so huge. Just gazing at a normal landscape
So
from sea
huge.
level wouldn't look too different, especially with all of the buildings, hills, and clouds in our way. But up in the sky, it's a different story. Fly 35,000 feet in the air with a wide, cloud-free view of the horizon, and you'll see the
With a
slight
wide
curvature
angle
of our
lens.
round planet. If the world was flat, you could just stand on a beach and see ships appear without part of them being obscured.
Okay, so you don't understand the first thing about perspective. Typical globe head. Everything on the horizon is on a flat, level plane below your feet. This is why I can't understand people can't get this. It is below your feet. It should, in reality, appear down here invisible. But the way our eyes work, laws of perspective mean what's below our feet rises up to eye level, the middle of the screen. That is the horizon. That's your cutoff point. Everything above it sinks down towards it as it goes towards in the distance. But if you're up really close to this, you would know that that boat would fill up your entire point of view. You cannot see you would see nothing above it. It'd be right in your face, and to crane your neck backwards to look up because it is so high. That means it is above your eye level. It might look like it's getting close to your eye level down here where it's starting to merge into it, but it's still hundreds of feet, probably, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 feet, whatever height boats are, above your head level. You're standing here on the shore, all of this water here rising up is below your feet. All the sky here is sinking down into the convergence point. So when the boat reaches a certain point, the bottom will start to disappear first because it is actually below your feet. And the further away it goes, the more then this obfuscation point or obstruction point starts to block it, because the bits above this point here, if you're at sea level, is only about 3 miles away. So you think about that, something 3 miles away compared to this up here being 20 miles away, the 3 mile bit rising up physically blocks by way of perspective. The further it goes, the more it will hide the bottom until it appears to eventually sink over the curvature, which is just nonsense. You can see how flat it is from here to here. How can it be here? You look at that size of that one. Let's say from there to there is 10 miles. I could be wrong. It's probably only 6 or 7. But going over here at 3 miles, you're thinking it's starting to go over the curvature after 3 miles, but where is the curvature this way? It works both ways. If the Earth is a sphere, you have to see the curvature this way if it's disappearing over it that way. But this one here will never show it doing that. You won't see going up and down over the curvature you think this one's going over. In fact, this is the biggest hoax of all when it comes to thinking you're on a globe. If you understand anything at all about perspective, is that the law of perspective saying it's rising up here, you look around in 360 degrees, it's rising up away from you in every direction, which means We live on a freaking golf ball. We live in the middle of a dimple. We're on top of the golf ball at all times, but we're in a dimple. It always goes up first, then over the dimple in all directions. This is actually the biggest proof we're not on a globe at all, because everybody seems to think they live in a golf ball dimple. And then they say, no, we're not saying it's rising up. They're saying it's going down the whole time, but why is it rising up? That is clearly up. See that? That's the bottom of the screen. That's the top of the screen. That's the middle of the screen. If the boat leaves here, it should be going down straight away if we're on a globe, going away from us. But no, it goes up for a good 3 miles. If you went up higher, it'd be 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 miles. That you can see, because that's what you see on a flat surface until everything reaches this horizon point where so much distance blends into that vanishing point, as we call it. Globe debunked. We do not live on a golf ball. Yet everybody believes the world rises up away from them for at least 3 miles before it starts curving down away from them. That's just stupid.
By the curvature of the planet until they get closer. Interestingly enough, if we really could see out endlessly on a clear day without our view being obscured, it wouldn't necessarily mean that the world was flat. It could also mean that the planet has grown so enormous that the curvature is even more imperceptible from the planet's surface.
No. You don't get to say that. You've made your scientific calculations. You say it's a circumference of 25,000 miles, just under. And it can be mathematically proven how much curvature it should be seen. We've got Earth curvature calculators. There's multiple of them now. You can just Google for one and check how far you will see, how far things should be hidden at what distance from your height. So you can't go and say, well, the Earth must be even bigger than we previously thought just because it suits you, because we can't see any curvature. You're just lying now.
Seasons. You probably know that on a round planet, the seasons are caused by the tilt of our rotational axis away or towards the sun as we orbit around it. But if the planet was flat, there would be no tilt, and thus...
See, you're still believing in the heliocentric concept, which is just ridiculous to think that we could float in a vacuum of space and still hold an atmosphere. But the whole tilt thing to control the seasons. Now, the sun is 93 million miles away in this false heliocentric sun-worshipping cult belief system, and there is absolutely no way that that slight little tilt would make an iota of difference to a sun 93 million miles away. So you're talking the distance between 93 million 25,000 miles, so let's say 3,000, a 3,000 mile tilt difference is enough to create the seasons. Massive differences between temperature by being give or take 3,000 miles, even though they will say, let's go back a tiny little bit here. Yeah, I'd love to get bloody spam. There we go. Even though they say that this is an elliptical orbit, so we get closer to the sun and we're furthest from it when the northern hemisphere has its summer. I'm not sure the exact number of miles, but it's in the millions of miles further away for the northern hemisphere's summer, yet that 3,000 degree tilt difference is enough to still give it summer. You've got to be jerking my chain.
Towards the sun as we orbit around it. But if the planet was flat, there would be no tilt, and thus no change to the amount of incoming sunlight.
Because the sun goes over us,
where you were on the planet. Not to mention that there would be no more North Pole or South Pole, each with freezing cold weather. Nor would...
Well, on the flat Earth model, of course we have poles based on completely different semantics. As you see it on the flat Earth map, north is so far towards the center and the south is so far towards the outside. The sun, I'll see if you can visualize this here because I don't have any graphics to show a map, but if that's the round circle of the flat Earth map, North Pole in the center, the sun is always going around the equator every single day, 24 hours to get back to its starting spot again. As it comes further away, as we know it does for the Northern Hemisphere summer, the circle appears to be smaller from the people looking up from down below. So that's how you get your 24-hour sun in the far north during the summer, and we get really cold down here in the south. And then obviously vice versa, as the sun gets closer, it appears to go bigger and bigger. But it never goes so far to the south that the frozen ice circle around is completely different from the North Pole, completely different, is super freezing cold and stays that way because the sun never gets nearly close enough to it to ever have a summer season whatsoever. It gets a little bit warmer, but nothing like the North Pole does because direct light shining through less atmosphere, even though the sun is further away, higher above us, it still is direct enough to create enough heat to have a summer in the north. But you don't get that in the far deep south of Antarctica because the sun never goes that far. It gets close enough down to give the southern continents a much longer, hotter summer, but we're also mostly ocean as well, and that tends to control the temperature from getting too hot. Plus, surrounded by the giant freezer of Antarctica, helps keep everything reasonably moderate. Enough to convince globeheads anyway that we live on a planet.
There'd be an equator with hot weather. The only way you'd get to see snow on a flat Earth would be if you traveled to the highest possible mountains. You'd also say goodbye to hurricanes, tornadoes, and other extreme weather conditions because there would be no spinning motion to drive storm systems.
There we go, another globehead lie. The spinning motion is not created by the ground beneath our feet moving at 2/3 the speed of a speeding bullet. That is ridiculous. The sun goes around above us through the atmosphere, and it's a great hot source of light and heat. And what happens in the wake of something moving at approximately 1,040 miles an hour in order to make the circumference around the equator of roughly 25,000 miles each day is it creates vortices either side of it, exactly as a boat going through the ocean, going through the water in its wake creates vortices spiraling out. Well, in the air, they call them eddies. Eddies, well, we won't go to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, space-time continuum. Eddies just in the air. And sometimes, just like the butterfly effect, sometimes they hit the right conditions, the right temperature, the right amount of humidity, the right ocean currents, and they form big storms. When it happens over the dry ground in a hot place, with nothing to stop them, air tends to have a tendency to want to catch on with the surrounding air. What it's doing, it just joins in and says, all right, let's do this. This is like the vortex energy of everything in nature. And air does it just as much as anything else. And when it gets started by this tiny little or massive big influence from the sun passing way overhead, hits the right conditions, it will form things like cyclones, hurricanes, tropical storms, you
To get a
name
bit
it.
of rain, air needs to rise into the moisture and it can cool and condense. On a flat Earth, this would only happen in the afternoon when the sun hitting land areas creates a sea breeze moving inland.
What? Say that again, lady.
On a flat Earth, this would only happen in the afternoon when the sun hitting land areas creates a sea breeze moving inland. Oh,
This, that's just doing my head in. Honestly, oh, only happen in the afternoon? Oh, that's right, because you still think the sun is going around a flat Earth, so the whole thing is lit up at once. So, the mentality of you people that actually still think that way, I'm seriously flabbergasted. I cannot, for the life of me, not understand how having a near local sun going around above us at various heights to create the seasons. And basically we get our two equinoxes when it appears at the equal height above everything, that it's exactly appearing from everywhere to go above the equator, those two times of the year where in the sun and lemma it crosses over in that figure eight bit, or that figure eight center cross point. That's your two equinoxes of the year. The sun going around above us, creating vortices in its wake constantly. It's always going to be shining on land, then ocean, then land, then ocean, then land, then ocean. It's got nothing to do with in the afternoon. There's like 24 different time zones. The sun being the hour hand of a 24-hour clock going around and around above us. Every hour is the creation of a different time zone. So there's no real such thing as the afternoon on the total of the planet. You've got your local afternoon, you've got your local morning, you've got your local noon, you've got your local midnight. Wherever the sun is at noon here, the exact opposite side is the local midnight. That's how it works. It doesn't work some sort of flippy floppy magic on a disc in space concept you just tried to explain, which makes no sense whatsoever. No wonder so many globeheads can't grasp the flat earth if they're watching debunking videos like this, where you just mess with their heads even more. If they didn't already have a good grounding in flat earth, they never would get it watching shit like this. They'll just keep believing in the nonsense that you inflict upon the poor innocent minds of the gullible, brainwashed, indoctrinated children that you've put through the school system their whole life, and they've never really grown into adults at all. They're still stuck with these infantile concepts of living on the top of the bottom of a spinning ball.
Overall, the weather on the planet as a whole would be pretty much like the weather in the Middle East now, and there would be a lot of out-of-touch meteorologists. The flattening. If the shape of our planet was flat, it would only be a matter of time before the entire surface was as well. Plate tectonics are what help mountains keep growing upwards instead of just eroding away. If we don't have plate tectonics...
Wait a minute, that's not what you showed earlier. See that?
Time before the entire surface was as well. Plate tectonics are what help mountains keep growing upwards instead of just eroding away.
What the hell is this? What the hell is that? One's not going under the other now. So you keep chopping and changing however it suits your agenda. Wow. On the flat earth, everything is flat. And yes, it compresses due to density. And that density of compression will cause heat, which creates hot spots. And occasionally through a weak spot, you might get a volcanic eruption. Like somebody might get a pimple on their face. It doesn't mean the earth isn't flat because we have volcanoes. You're still thinking of it as being this floating disc in outer space, which not a single flat earther who knows anything about anything will tell you that's what it is, because not.
If we don't have plate tectonics, there is going to be a huge amount of eroding material in time. That means we could see the Grand Canyon filled up with material until it's just another flat expanse.
Well, that's true. Okay, you've got a good point there, and this is what many of us are believing actually is happening. We once thought that these things here were giant trees, and these are, remnants of the stumps of what were once giant trees. And if you can see with these tiny little trees here, they're dropping leaf litter onto the ground all the time, which is full of organisms, worms and bugs and all sorts of stuff that create the soil. So the earth is a growing, living organism, and it was once thriving. If you can imagine these were once giant trees, you can just imagine how massively fast the earth itself would have been growing above the sea level. But because of the way we live now, see how we've cut everything down, we let animals erode everything into the waterways, and all the waterways of course lead into the flat level oceans around us, that yes, you're right, everything is going to erode into it if we don't start mulching our living earth again and stop paving over it, stop draining all the water into the rivers and creeks to flush into the ocean and take away all our precious minerals and soil. We are killing it. We are part of the disease killing this planet. What a terrible word, planet. This plane, this flat, infinite plane. We're basically living on what you might think of as organic icebergs. Rather than ice, of course, we're made out of dirt. We're made out of shit, is the best word to put it. That's all it is. It's decomposing matter. Everything is shit. Something eats it, something shits it out. Something eats that, something shits that out. It's a thriving, living, big pile of shit. And we once were the kings of this place, living in massive trees. We were up in the heavens, practically up at the stars. We never had to worry about any of those dinosaurs and so forth, if they even existed, roaming on the ground level, all the wild animals, all that sort of stuff, because we were living practically hand in hand in the heavens until for some reason or another the giants came and destroyed us, probably because we were a bit warlike. We do have a tendency to be a bit territorial like that, and maybe a giant wandered too far into our homeland at one stage, and he woke up and he was covered with hundreds of ropes, couldn't get up, and it turns out that this giant was, say, their favoured king, and for whatever reason those people decided to kill him or enslave him or whatever they did with him. And when the other giants found out, they said, oh, they've declared war on us, let's go and wipe them out. And that's exactly what they did, and they placed a giant bowl over us, and we're living here in this decaying dung heap, looking at the relics, the fossils of what were once massive giant trees reaching to the heavens, living in these little, that sort of disgusts me, to be honest. I have to be fair. This is my honest opinion. When I see things made out of wood and timber, I feel like that's just the equivalent of, say, I don't know, building your house out of the bones of a whale or something. These are decaying remnants of once living trees, and they were only babies too. These guys are all babies in comparison to, look at that. Look how big and fantastic that one would have once been. But we like to live in the decomposing corpses of them because we're basically just survivors living in the aftermath of the worst war you could imagine.
That would be pretty huge for people who live in mountainous areas, or just people who are fans of skiing. The silver lining would be that because there are no more shifting plate tectonics, there would also be no more earthquakes. But that seems like a consolation prize at this point. You can also
see that you're still trying to rewrite the laws of physics. The shifting plate tectonics is ridiculous because it's not shifting plate tectonics, it's shifting floating piles of shit. And occasionally they move around a bit and bump into each other and grind, and that's what gives the appearance or the actual occurrence of earthquakes. Plus, as I said, things like the pressurization and different heat and so on happening deep down that will create volcanic activity. Well, that's also going to shake up the ground a bit too. So you can't rewrite all the laws of physics that we've already well known for so long just because you now understand that we live on a flat, infinite plane. You've just got it wrong in the first place, and it doesn't mean that anything else changes in accordance with this new understanding.
Forget about seeing a beautiful mountain sunrise, because the transition from day to night would be quite abrupt.
Oh, God. No. See, this is what really shits me. They're still basing it off this model, thinking the sun goes over us and then sets again. So the whole Earth is in nighttime all at once. That is just so wrong, it's not even funny. I don't even know why I'm trying to debunk this one. This is like a children's bloody story.
Not only would the way we see our beloved planet change if the Earth was flat, but the moon would look quite different as well. Even though
Look, you don't rewrite the rules just because you don't understand the model. The moon looks how it looks because that's how it looks, as it is, over the flat Earth. We're looking up at the bottom of it. And here you go saying that we don't see it that way, or we wouldn't, if the Earth was flat. But if the Earth is flat, which we know it is, then this is how we see it. So stop trying to rewrite the rules. God.
The moon appears to have different phases when we look at it from Earth, the moon itself isn't changing. What we see is the shadow of the Earth on the face of the moon, and you'll notice that it's definitely a curved shadow that we can see. We
You
also
are
only
kidding.
see one side of the moon, with only minor changes in viewing angle. But
You are kidding. Did you just tell me that the phases are caused by the shadow of the Earth? Get the out of here, you idiot. Even most of the most ignorant globeheads know that the phases of the moon are not caused by the shadow of the Earth. They think it causes the eclipse, fair enough, but nobody says that's the phases. This is honestly the worst 10 things that would happen if the Earth was flat video I've ever seen in my life.
if the Earth was flat, we would be able to see different sides of the moon depending on where we stood on the planet.
Oh God, no, 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 no. You understand nothing about height perspective whatsoever. Go to a warehouse, one with a really, really high ceiling, and stick a picture of the moon on the roof of the ceiling, on the inside of it. Doesn't matter where you go. Okay, hang it up as a ball. It's probably not going to be that as effective because it has to be up really high before you're only ever going to see the bottom of it. But you're certainly going to see it inverted if you went to the other side of the warehouse and looked up at it from the other direction. But to think that we would see the side of an object so high up above us, when if we watch a plane going over at just 6 or 7 miles, we only ever see the bottom undercarriage of the plane. We never see anything more than that. You never see the sides of the plane, no matter what angle you view it at. No matter if you watch it from horizon to horizon, you're only looking up at the bottom of it. Now, if the moon were even only 50 miles high, that is massively high, to the point you would never ever see the side of it from any other angle. Maybe, I don't, 10 or 20 feet around the side, perhaps. Nothing more that we don't actually see anyway. We're looking up at the bottom of it, you stupid, supercilious twat.
Someone in Quebec, Canada, would see the front of a nearly full moon, while someone standing in Chile would see the dark backside of the same moon. Not to mention that if the Earth was flat, it's likely the moon would be as well because of whatever new gravity rules that make flat planets possible. In fact, all of the cosmic
So
gas,
annoying.
dust, and rock
No rules
in our
change.
solar system
Dumb
would
bitch.
arrange into disks rather than spherical patterns, meaning that we wouldn't be the only flat
Heliocentric
planet.
nonsense.
Wait, it's easy to get so focused on what that number on the scale is that we completely forget what it represents. What our bathroom scale is
Density and
measuring when
buoyancy.
we step onto it is your gravitational pull. Your weight changes depending on how strong a planet's gravity is. For example, if you weigh
Oh
200 pounds
God.
here, you'd only weigh 33 pounds
This
on
is
the moon.
pathetic. I shouldn't
However,
have
if you
even
travel to
started on
Jupiter,
this one.
you would weigh 473 pounds. On a round planet, you'll weigh the same no matter where you stand, since gravity is always pulling you towards the center of the planet. Two people who weigh exactly the same while standing next to each other could have completely different weights when standing on different places in a flat world. Space travel.
But they don't. That's the thing. You're just making up more and more bullshit to try and keep brainwashing the already brainwashed masses. I'm really sorry I even opened up this stupid video. It's pathetic. It's not even worth trying to debunk. I've come this far. Let's keep going.
If the planet has really been flat forever, that would have serious implications for our lives. For one thing, that means that all space travel, those satellites in orbit and the moon landing, all of that was completely faked. Why
Yeah,
would NASA
it
and
is.
other agencies do all of this to promote some sort of round Earth
Propaganda,
conspiracy?
it's called.
We know that the space race in which different countries tried to
Wartime
land on the moon
propaganda.
first was a big deal. So is this really all some sort of battle for supremacy where everyone knows that they're all faking it, but don't
Yep.
want to admit it? This would mean that our governments and even our scientists aren't to be trusted. Not to mention,
Very
people can
good.
deal with how
You're catching
smug
on
all
quick.
those moon landing hoaxers would be about the whole thing. That might be even worse than all of the giant volcanoes that would happen to be on a flat planet. So much of our scientific knowledge is based on the idea of gravity functioning the way that we think it does, that we would have to reevaluate pretty much our entire body of scientific knowledge. The societal and scientific ramifications of this discovery would be enormous. Night sky. People have known that the Earth was round for an extremely long time. Way back in Aristotle's time,
They haven't known shit, lady. All they've noticed is that stars disappear like anything does in the distance, and as you get further away from it, it appears to sink towards the horizon until it's obscured by the horizon. And because of that, they deluded themselves into thinking they were living on a spinning ball, but it doesn't mean they knew jack shit.
from 384 to 322 BCE, he noticed that different constellations were seen depending on your distance from the equator,
I predicted
and concluded that this meant we were standing on a round planet. On a flat planet, we would be stuck gazing upwards at a constant and unchanging star pattern.
Unless, of course, the stars themselves were the ones moving around us, as they do, as you can clearly see in time-lapse video and photos around Polaris, how they make perfect circles from anywhere in the northern hemisphere if you align your camera with Polaris. Now that would be impossible because you're moving in an elliptical rotation by account of how far away from the North Pole you are compared to the stars. So the further from the North Pole, the more and more elliptical the circles would become. They're still perfect circles near the North Pole. Just ridiculous to think that the stars moving around above us is proof that we live on a spinning ball.
It would be geometrically impossible to see two different star patterns rotating around the poles the way that we do now.
Actually, no. It would be geometrically impossible to see any star patterns remain the same for thousands of years, even week after week, year after year. The change in parallax from these things that are supposedly billions and billions of miles away from each other would be so noticeably different just in one night's movement, when we just move 1.6 million miles, which is how far we go around the sun each day, feeling nothing of it, mind you. The stars and the parallax and the constellations would never be constant 2 nights in a row, let alone year after year, century after century.
Over a 24-hour period, every human being on the planet would see the exact same stars if the Earth was flat. Because Earth isn't a flat disk, it occasionally blocks our view of the night sky, obscuring certain stars at certain times. Not to mention that we have actually been in space
Who's taking that
and
picture?
been able to take images of a round Earth.
Oh,
Sure, it
composite.
could actually be a disk, but that would only be
We don't
true
call
if
it a
we
disk,
had
you
only
stupid
taken a few
bitch.
photos of the planet from one specific angle, which just isn't the case. Either it's that massive and far-reaching conspiracy we mentioned, or we just have to admit that we live on a round planet.
That we lie about the round planet, which you've done a great job of lying through your dirty, stinking, NASA programmed ass.
Have we managed to convince you that the world is round, or are you planning to pack your level the
You've
next time you
convinced
go to
me
Planet?
of what a
Hopefully you've come
liar
around
you are.
and have decided to embrace our wonderfully spherical planet. Before you head out to see some ships
Oh,
coming over the
God.
horizon,
Some
don't
shits.
forget to like our video and subscribe to The Richest for more. And
The
before
richest.
you go, don't forget to check out all of the new and
Well, that
exciting
was really
content
disappointing.
over at The Richest
I'm very
Espanol.
sorry.
Adios.
Oh, I'm very sorry about that one. Let's cancel that because I don't know what it is. Oh, God. I wish I could have found the one I wanted to. I did search for it. It was the top 10 ones. Anyway, I'm just going to put this one on because I have no idea what it is. We'll skip that in there. I'm just going to let that run for a moment while I take a break.
Things aren't absolutely impossible on our planet, even in the
My
wildest
knees went stiff.
imagination. But as practice shows, what isn't possible with us is still possible on other planets. Let's look at ordinary rain as an example. Rain is usually cold and gloomy, and very, very wet. And in general, the Earth's rain, well, it's boring. The rain of stones on planet Korat 7b, however, is quite another matter. We wouldn't be bored there. It's very, very hot on one half of the strange space object. The surface temperature reaches 4,700 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 2,600 degrees Celsius. And that's more than enough to make the rocks melt and then evaporate like puddles of water here on Earth. At the same time, the other half of the planet is relatively cool at about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 1,900 degrees Celsius. So, the rocks abrade and then condense into huge stone clouds under the hellish temperatures on the hot half of the planet. And then these clouds fall as rains of magma heading back to the surface. On the relatively cooler side of the planet, the rain made of magma solidifies into stones before hitting the surface. This is real stone rain. Can you imagine seeing this with your own eyes? But wait, this next place will astonish you even more. HD 189773b is an exoplanet located 63 light years from us. It's slightly larger than Jupiter in size, and most likely you will agree with me if I say that it looks awesome. Can you possibly imagine what horror lies behind all this beauty? Its fantastic appearance is due to the fact that the atmosphere of the planet consists mainly of silicate particles. Think sand or glass. It also rains at a temperature of 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 930 degrees Celsius. And it has winds that often reach 5,400 miles per hour. That's 8,700 kilometers per hour, which is 7 times faster than the speed of sound. This is even more terrifying than the rains on the previous planet. Here, they're as clean as glass. Just imagine the scene. Clouds are coming from behind the horizon. Echoes of thunder crack through. The wind surges to a speed of 1.24 miles per second. And finally, the sky explodes with pouring rain. Masses of glass are tearing through the atmosphere and into you at insane speeds. If such a storm suddenly arose on Earth at the same wind speed, it would fly around our planet at the equator in just 5 hours and 33 minutes. Local residents would feel it quite powerfully. But speaking of winds,
I'm sick of that one now. I hope you enjoyed the little break there. I've come back now to talk directly to all 0 of you. Thanks for staying with me. That's really cool. I wonder if it shows if anybody chatted, if I hit that. Ah, yeah, there is. All messages are visible. I'm here, keep it flat, Priest Bro. Libra 61 star, thanks. I didn't have chat visible, I don't know why. Plus I wasn't looking at it most of the time anyway. So thanks for joining me for that short amount of time. I'm now going to talk about a bit of geography. I've got some rocks here. So this one here, this one is a bit of a mind blow. I've got another one somewhere which I don't know where. See, it's got a perfectly flat. I kid you not, like it was made by a stonemason or a concreter. I had another one once very similar to this, and it was also perfectly flat, but when you sat it in such a way, the angles, just like this one, weren't quite right. It's not like it's a piece of mortar from a building the way we expect to wash up on the beach. All these rocks I have washed up on the beach, mind you. That one I found looked exactly like a petrified tongue, and when I put it in my mouth and actually held it there, it seriously looked as though I had it hanging out of my, like it was my tongue hanging out of my mouth. But anyway, I'm going to get into them in a minute. I feel like singing a song because, damn it, it's me day off. Normally on a Wednesday I go bowling, go and play lawn bowls, but I got no money, and it costs $12 in green fees, $7 for a beer, if you can get over that. $7, I mean, that's ridiculous. I have to drink my own homebrewed beer, which $7 would probably buy me the equivalent of about a carton of 24 beers. But I have to do all the work myself, of course, but my beer's as good as any. Some are better than others. That one's drinkable. It's not great. I'm actually doing less and less experimentation with them these days. I used to experiment with all sorts of different herbs and spices and stuff, but you have to have money to afford those things. They're expensive. So here we go with a spinning ball at Magic song. Heliocentric sun worship, Masonic illumination. Gravity's a glue that keeps us down, upside hallucination. Moving faster than the speed of sound, it's spinning ball of magic. Where's the edge of the world? Just look at Antarctic exploration. High jump the fishbowl, project the bird, treat a size each and every nation. It's understood that Hollywood sells spinning ball earth magic. Sell the globe world very well, put it into every classroom. Spinning on a ball, feeling nothing at all, surrounded by a vacuum. A blue marble to fool us all. Dream of spinning ball at magic. Dream of spinning ball at magic. It seems you're the son of God with your very own constellations. Savior of the world, it's told, just believe you'll have salvation. While Mother Earth gets raped and fracked for the greed and our starvation. Space might be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Disseminating bullshit every day, disguised as entertainment. Did you hear the news? There's a new program selling spinning ball earth magic. Born and raised by those who praise control of their slave nations. Nobody's ever been there on a shuttle to the space station. A blue marble, it's Photoshop to fool us all. It has to be. If you look into the flat earth truth, you'll find your mind awakening. The matrix lies right to your eyes, but the red pill is amazing. You goyim better wake up soon, don't be a cow, stop grazing. The flat earth is the truth to all of your indoctrination. It served its purpose very well, ball and chain to the slave nation. Unlocked from the ball, unchained from it all. Awake from spinning ball of magic. To believe in such a big lie is tragic. Awake from spinning ball of magic. Mind control is mystic. Don't be fooled by the great deceiver, Lucifer, Satan, and Baal. Well, that was fun. Good to see so many of you commenting and enjoying it on the... Oh, hang on. Still at 0 viewers. Going for an hour and 10 too. That's okay. You'll be able to watch it on the repeat, and I can make longer than 30-minute videos because I'm going live, so that's the main thing. Take a breath, and I like that song. I'm gonna play that one when I go out and do some do some street busking and shit. But in the meantime, I'm going to do some geography, because I think most of us understand, especially myself when I was a young fella, I was fascinated. I grew up as a young fella saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be much like my grandfather. He was a science teacher, and there was no question about it. I was going to be a scientist. That was my thinking as a kid. When I grow up, I'm going to be a scientist because I like to understand the way things work, the nature of our world, the nature of everything. And naturally, one of the first things about science is, I think, geography, because geography is sort of like a record of the history of the planet we were told we live on. Let me just grab something flat. Won't be a second. It's just a coaster. This is a coaster I've actually done heat experiments under the full moon with the laser thermometer before. I thought this was like metal or tin, but it turns out it's just a hard plastic. And on the other side is cork. And turns out, yes, things do get cooler in the direct moonlight than they do in the moonshade. Which I was with my son at the time. I think he was in his second year, which he's currently now in his third, of his double degree in chemical engineering. So, we got pretty smart chance. So you can see, I don't know if it shows up that well on camera, it's a little bit unflat, but it's mostly pretty darn flat. If I hold it up against that straight edge there, there's not much gap to be seen. There's a little bit at the bottom there. It's pretty much flat. If I hold it against down there, see, so it's obviously a natural rock formation. How it forms so flat when most other rocks, well, not this one I did not find in the ocean. All the other ones I did. This one I found by the side of the road. This is my, what I call moon rock, because I figure that's the side of the moon that we're always seeing, and it's floating up above us like this. So when the moon hits it, when the sun hits it, from the side, it appears to glow through the whole thing. That's how we see the full moon. The rest of the time, I believe it's more like a physical object, the moon that is, showing us the phases. As it gets nearer to the sun, it gets less and less of the visible side facing us. Anyway, I'm not here to discuss the moon. I've done that many times before. I'm here to discuss the formation of rocks. Now, how can the natural tendency of physical objects, it is told, is to form into a sphere, and yet out of all the hundreds of thousands, okay, dozens of thousands of rocks I've picked up over the years, most of which are in my various fish tanks, I've never found a perfect sphere, ever. And these are things that are ground and round by the waves, the ocean, all the sand around it. The natural tendency of things to form in nature as spheres, I think, is a big fat lie. So to think that our planet could be spherical, well, then they show these really strange shaped things, like maybe not as odd as this, but they show that this one might be closer to a planet. I mean, look, it's got stripes. It might be like Jupiter, but you know, it's pretty cool stripes. So this is how we sort of think that most rocks form. Layers of sediment settling over time, sediment getting compressed, somehow turning into stone, somehow breaking up, somehow getting into the ocean, somehow getting ground up. This is a very smooth rock. It's very polished. This is why I like picking up nice, smooth, polished stones on the beach sometimes. I mean, I walk past billions of them, generally speaking, which I don't pick up. Sometimes they really call out to me and I actually start walking backwards and go back and pick it up. But generally speaking, I'll walk past, 1,000 similar sort of stones to this every time I go for a walk down the beach, which I used to do on a daily basis. These days I'm now living a good half an hour away from the beach. I don't do nearly so often, but I used to do it all the time, which is why I've got these rocks here. So you would think sediment settling is basically the explanation for why we see these lines in a rock. Makes sense. What about something like this one though? How does that make sense? In any sort of natural rock formation consideration that you could possibly imagine, look at all the different lines. And I've got millions, well, I've got many examples of rocks with these weird straight lines, none of which make sense according to what I was taught as a kid as to how sediments would settle and form into rock formations. None whatsoever. I mean, this red stuff and the white stuff turning into rock at the same time in these perfectly straight lines. It doesn't make a lot of sense as to how a rock would form with such formations according to what we're told is the natural settlement of stuff that turns into rock. Was it from volcanic magma, melting magma? And so it's pretty hard to explain. I mean, how do you explain magma forming into such a thing as that? That's just one of many, many, many examples. This one here is a really ordinary looking rock, and yet once again, you look closely. Look at the lines going through it. How does that make sense? Where everything settles according to the forces of gravity and different weights, why is there that many different naturally occurring lines forming in this natural occurring piece of rock that washed up on a beach with these strange lines through it? Next example, here's another one. This is why I picked them up, because I like to sit and look at them. It's got a flat base again, a bit like that other piece, but look at all these lines through it. None of them make sense according to what we would believe, the geophysical formation of rocks occurs at. If this one's forming as a flat layer, why is this one forming up here? Why is that one forming up there? How does that make any sense in our understanding of the formation of rocks? I've got tons of examples. This one here, it's not even rounded off. This is one I just picked up last week, actually. As I say, I don't get down to the beach as often anymore, but I did. And I picked this one up as I was like, what the? It's not even rounded off. And then I thought, well, okay, of course, up at Cape Byron, they're still doing lots of different work in the headland, as they're always doing, because it's like a multi-millionaire's paradise now. You have to be a multi-millionaire just to afford a tiny block of land there. Then you have to excavate it and put in all your footings and foundations and build your big mansion to live in the millionaire's row. I think the cheapest house to sell at $1 million was some 5 or more years ago at that place. They're all 3 million plus now. Ridiculous. So that's why I figured this might have washed up a couple of kilometres up the beach as a result of something from there, because otherwise it makes no sense why it would be on the beach and not be worn smooth like, say, this little fella is, with its straight lines. Oops. Okay, so let's pick up another one. Here's another one worn smooth. Not so many lines in this one. I'm just using this as an example. It's flat. It's very worn and smooth. And in fact, if you're anything like me, as you grew up as a child, you'd possibly go down rivers and creeks and whatnot quite often. And you'd like to skip stones. Well, this here would be a perfect skipping stone. You'd pick this one up and you'd skim it across the water and you'd see how many jumps you could make it do before it finally sunk into the water. We'd spend countless hours doing that as kids, like me and my cousins. You'd find the perfect rock. I mean, that's what it's all about. You'd be finding flat rocks. Never once did we find a spherical rock. To me, this is a petrified bird egg. A very small one. Slightly smaller even than a bantam chicken's egg. But it's even got slight little indentations in it, naturally occurring. See if I can hold that flat enough. It will actually stand itself up. A little bit wobbly. It will stand itself up despite being what you would call perfectly egg-shaped in every other respect. There's something magical about this one. I don't think it's been artificially polished either because of those little flat spots. It's as though it was sitting in amongst a nest of other eggs, and those little flat spots are where it was just touching against another one when they somehow got instantly transformed into stone. Now, I've looked through it through a light. You cannot see any formation of a baby bird or dinosaur or anything like that, or fish. Because we all know fish build nests up in trees to make their eggs get petrified. So, just another little mystery. Here's just another little rock. Nothing special about this one, except when you start looking at the lines. How does any of that make any sense in any geological formation that you could possibly imagine occurring naturally due to natural causes? I mean, we don't really know how rocks formed. We think, as I was saying before, as I understood as a kid, when, why I admired my grandfather so much, because he was, as a science teacher, he actually gave me a rock collection one time, which just blew my mind. It was in a presentation case and just had the most fantastic, like, crystal formations, different things. I've lost most of them over the years. In fact, I'd be very surprised if I even have any of them left somewhere. But my point is, all of those had scientific explanations. This piece of quartz type rock, polished nicely, different colours through it, different bands, all forming at different angles. I can't explain that. Another piece of rock. And I collect these because of the different number of lines at different angles going through them. How do any of those make sense according to our understanding of how rocks should be forming? I simply cannot wrap my head around it. Hence why I keep collecting them. Here's another one. It's quite marbled. Mottled, you might say. Now there are explanations out there for how a lot of rocks formed, which is, when you think about it, quite interesting in itself, because you pretty much have to conjure up something. This isn't a rock, mind you, this is just a shell. This is how nature forms things in natural sort of patterns. Probably not the best example, actually. I don't even know why I kept this one, but it was probably quite shiny, sitting on the beach at the time, in the right light with a bit of water on it. Nature forms things according to logical patterns. Most shells, well, here's a snail shell. I don't know if this will show up on the camera here. Form in logical sequences. It starts off in this tiny little bit in the middle, and as it builds, it grows in a Fibonacci spiral till it ends up looking something like this by the time the creature inside making it dies. And it appears quite spherical in a half sort of way, because that's the nature of 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 8. That's how nature grows, the Fibonacci sequence. That's the most natural ratio of things growing. And of course, obviously what we're seeing in rocks is just something worn down over a long period of time. This one is quite flat and level. You'd think, okay, well, that one makes sense. We can see how that one formed in a layer, then as it got worn down into this beautifully polished, smooth stone, it's beautifully polished all around. Like, sometimes I just pick them up, so I've got something in my hand and just rub them as I'm walking along, contemplating all the secrets of the universe. This one, on the other hand, has a similar sort of thing, but it's not nearly so well worn. It's still a bit rough. See if it shows if it is flat and level. Not really. It's kind of like that there. Let's see if we spin it around this way. Yeah, kind of have to keep adjusting it. But it's not nearly so smooth. But again, different layers of rock formation between different layers. I'm going to come back to one of these in a moment. See, it's just another nice polished smooth one. Again, not naturally forming into a sphere or an oblate spheroid as they try and tell us planets naturally did when they formed after the Big Bang. Nature tends to create nice, smooth, polished, flat things that make good rocks for skipping. This one's sort of formed into a nice diamond shape. That's kind of like why I like this one. It's always look for symmetry. Things that could even be made into jewellery, perhaps, because it's an interesting word, isn't it? Jewellery. Shiny trinkets are worth money. We'll give you money for those. You find us enough of them. We'll utterly inflate the price of things that look pretty, so we can make more shekels. Let's call them jewellery. Another form of theft, but nothing too remarkable about this one except the odd geometrical shapes. Like, they're mostly flat surfaces, polished nice and smooth by nature. Why didn't it polish it into a ball? It decided, no, I'm going to polish this one into this odd shape instead. You can't really tell nature what to do. I don't know why this one's here. It's just an ugly piece of rock. Nothing special. It's got a bit of a line through it. Just another one for the fish tank. Here's another interesting piece. Lots of odd lines through it. All different directions, all different shapes. Nothing to see here. just the natural geographical formation of sedimentary layers falling on top of each other, polished by nature. Makes a lot of sense, eh? I could find this many, or hundreds of times more, to be honest, in 10 minutes walking down the beach, just picking up random rocks as they all are. This one's a nice polished smooth one, so I like this one. Polished beautifully smooth, almost like a, well, it's a rock. I sometimes find seeds that look similar to this, seed pods that float up, but this is a rock, hard as a rock, no doubt about it. It's got a little chip out of it there somewhere, but it's also been polished smooth over time. Hard to explain why there's that little chip in it. Polished just as smooth as the rest of it. Not quite as smooth, I should say. But I'll see if the camera will focus on that. Nice and smooth. Polished over hundreds of thousands of years. Got a nice line running through it too. I'm getting near the bottom of the pile here. This one is again not a rock. It's a galaxy. Oh, hang on, no, it's a rock. It's actually, you know, as someone who's collected shells most of their life, what was once a piece of shell, as you can see by the spiral on it, hopefully that will show, is now actually fully petrified rock. I actually thought that was a shell when I found it the other day too. But it's rock. It's petrified. It's fossilized. Fossilized rock. How cool, eh? Fibonacci spiral once again. Natural growth patterns. 1 plus 2. 2 plus 3. 3 plus 5. 5 plus 8. 8 plus 13. 13 plus 21. I'm not going to do maths now because my brain doesn't work that well. Oh, I mean the lines in this tiny little fellow. Okay, so my point of doing this, there is a point, which I am getting to eventually. The lines of the natural geographical formations of sedimentary layers settling on top of each other to form something like this. And I think this is my best example, which I'm going to use to make my point, is that the rocks that we find washed up on the beach are not what we think they are. They are something completely different. I don't know if you can see where I'm going here with this. I don't know if maybe if I press top chat, that might keep it there on top. I had a visitor, they didn't comment. The point I'm getting to here with these rocks is that they were not formed from natural geographical sedimentary settlement as you might think. Far from it. this here, now I'm not going to say what it was exactly, what it belonged to. It was part of a living being. We could say a dinosaur if you wanted to. You could say a giant if you wanted to. You might say a human being if you want. They're like muscle tendons, muscle fibers, veins, all these rocks, every single piece of it. They resemble something more like a steak than they do what you'd expect from if you were to artificially create your own rocks some way. If you were able to compress sedimentary layers, leave them sitting underground for millions of years, and have them somehow pop up into existence after hundreds of thousands of years of being washed around in the ocean, polished by the sea, turning up as... I mean, this here, that reminds me of, say, a little bit of muscle, fat fibre around a chicken breast. Yeah, you always get that little fat bit you got to cut off. Now I can understand, yeah, maybe the rest of it got polished by the ocean over hundreds of thousands of years. But this is what I'm basically trying to say, is that all these random rocks that you just pick up off the beach, not a single one of them makes sense according to scientific belief of how rocks themselves should be forming. A very, very odd thing indeed. But if they were the remains of living muscle tissue, living organs, living parts of muscle fibre, makes a lot more sense. So everything is some sort of petrified remains. I mean, this one, there's no logical explanation for how that got ground into this little sized rock over hundreds of thousands of years, formed from a natural geological formation, or a volcano, or mud, or whatever you like to think causes the formation of rocks. Absolutely no possible way is that a natural, normal way that we would expect rocks to be made, shaped and formed, and wash up on a beach. As I say, these are all just a bunch of random examples of which I can find hundreds of every single time. Sometimes I'd end up just putting them in my pocket without even knowing that I'm doing it. Other times I deliberately do because I think they've got a story to tell. That one I found some years back now, very reminiscent of this, very similar sort of stone. People just tell me, oh, it's a piece of concrete washed up. But why, if there's a really flat edge, is it not perfectly straight that way? Because as you can see, if I sit it straight, there's a bit of a straight edge there. That's almost perpendicular. But on this side of it, those angles don't make a lot of sense at all. Now that is flat. That is flat. They're almost like shear. That is flat. This here is flat. That there is flat, but not a single one of them is uniquely like perpendicular. Well, hang on. Perpendicular or parallel. They're all at their own unique flat angles. For what reason? probably smooth in places. It's smooth enough there. That would have once been quite a sharp edge. That actually looks like it's broken off something there in an almost perfectly flat manner, washed up on a beach. As I was saying, how I found a piece with a flat edge like that, but the rest of it shaped exactly like a tongue. So if I put it in my mouth and held it just like this, it really looked like I was poking at my tongue. How does that make any sense whatsoever? Unless there is some sort of phenomenon, a natural phenomenon, which naturally petrifies living tissue quite quickly. The giant trees, that's so much petrified wood. Wood, as we know, normally rots. Obviously, there must be conditions occasionally which are ideal to make things petrify and turn into stone. I don't know what it is. Could be that there's some form of alchemy which we've forgotten. There was this Russian guy, I think he was, not that long ago. Hold on a sec, throat's a bit dry. I think he was Russian. He developed the secrets to petrify living, well, not living. He actually got into a bit of trouble because he'd often get his subjects from raiding graves, from what I've heard, and try and petrify the dead body of. And he was quite successful at it. He had some sort of secret which was able to turn it into stone faster, obviously, than it could rot and turn into worm food or whatever, maggot food it usually does. So it's quite interesting that there is a process of virtually instant petrification, which we obviously don't know, but obviously people in the past have known about. And I think there are hundreds, possibly thousands of examples of natural rock formations that we can see today, which are examples of the remnants of what were once living giants. They're quite obvious now. I didn't even think that this was possible years back when I was living down in Hawk's Nest still. I used to go up to this place, we called it Silver Sands. That was just its name for some reason or other. But when you're there and you look at these island formations back down towards Hawk's Nest, which is the north side of Port Stephens, about an hour or so north of Newcastle, which is about 2 to 3 hours north of Sydney, just to give you some idea, it's down that way, down south. This island from this place called Silver Sands looked, for all intents and purposes, like the image of a lady laying on her back, looking up at the sky, with her legs spreading towards Port Stephens itself. It's uncanny. As soon as you could see it, you couldn't unsee it. And, I've always looked for, or not really looked for, but seen images of what appear to be fossilized giants, shall we say, in rock formations. I think it's just a natural thing. There is a word for it. It's not coming to me where you just see faces in things, and I've done that all my life, and I still do. Like, if I look at a cloud, I'm very good at spotting an image in it. I think it's with clouds especially, you can see what you want to see, but more often than not I'll see faces. Elephants I see quite regularly in the clouds around here. I've got pictures, bona fide pictures of this thing that looks like, that I'm not sure if it's a dragon as such, what they call it. I've never actually watched the movie, but the Never-Ending Story, there's this giant puffy dragon with big eyes and stuff. I've got pictures of clouds looking exactly like that, just down the valley here. And in fact, the second time I saw it, the exact same dragon, like a year or more later, this time, no, I mean, it sounds crazy, yeah, I know. And I got pictures as a rainbow coming out of its ass. So while it's sitting there like this big sleepy dragon, it's shitting a rainbow. Now, I'm not making this up. I don't hallucinate. I've got the actual pictures, which I've published on my Facebook. So you're most welcome to look me up. I always go by my real name. You hit me up with a friendship if you want. I usually, if you've got a real profile, you know, you're not just one of those got no mutual friends. It doesn't matter if we got no mutual friends, but if you seem legit and look me up, I will generally accept. And you'll be able to look through my photo albums and find this one where I've taken of this sleeping dragon, for want of a better word of it. And on one particular day, I took more and more pictures walking back up the valley where it followed me. At one stage, because of a chemtrail going behind it, where its mouth sort of opened up, it looked as though it was seriously breathing fire because of the time of night at sunset and stuff. That was really weird. Fire-breathing dragon. But then when I looked at the picture again a bit more closely, it looked even like something different, like a man flying out vertically. Pretty weird, eh? I'll see if there's any comments here, because I don't think anybody's talking. Doesn't stay on top for some reason. Anyway, I'm going to sing a song. That's why I'm holding this. This is going to be a really interesting one because I've been through a few different things so far. That's not the song I want to sing either. I'll try this one. And then I'm going to stop, so take care and see you around. I don't believe we live on a spinning ball, but I know, Glowhead, that you do. No, I've got the chords all wrong. How about that? Huh. How could I get it so wrong? Well, I'm not going to sing that one now. It's just ruined it for me. Once I lived in a dream world. I thought I lived on a ball. The delusion was contagious. It went totally viral. Everyone on the ball earth felt they lived on the top. Even those on the underside thought that they were the right side up. We got convinced we were spinning around and around. And though we couldn't feel a thing, they said it was faster than sound. But wait, there's more, they said, we're going round the sun. 1.6 million miles a day. Fun for everyone. Welcome to the globe world of delusion. Such a magic place, lying to your face. Plenty of room at the globe world of delusions, and a nice degree. Live in slavery. The planet's spinning and twisting as it races through space. Pop another happy pill to keep you off your face. Now you're back in the schoolyard, studying your books. There's a globe to remember your insignificance. And so I called to the teacher, please show me the curve. He whacked me with his meter stick, said, boy, you got enough. Just believe what we tell you, we've got all of the facts. We have 33 degrees, we're the masters of the seance. I can't do it. Let's have a drink. Stars stuck to the ceiling, the Coke Queen on ice, and she said, we're just prisoners here on our own device. Then all the mass debaters, they argued for the globe. They tried to cast their thorny spell, but the trumpets drowned them out. The last thing I remember, I was waking from my sleep. I was back on the flat earth, it was all just a dream. Relax, said the night man, we are sent here to relieve. We've come to cut the ball and chain, we've come to set you free. So that's where I should have gone back to the chorus, huh? Classic, eh? Fucking get everything wrong, right? Yeah. I must admit, I woke up with a nasty cough this morning. Oh shit, is that the time already? Alright, I'm definitely going after this last one. Take care. Now that I've seen that the earth is flat and all of the blue marbles are photoshopped, and the astronauts are all just acting in front of a green screen. The greatest feat in human history. And now we've gone and lost all the telemetry, and Van Allen's radiation belts are deadly. Oh baby, baby, it's a flat world. The firmament's high, the water is level. to get past the ice wall. You know I've seen a lot of what the glides can do. You're just a child when they indoctrinate you. They fill your head full of spin, yeah, they're cramming it all in. But if you want to be free, look within. Look around and see that the world don't spin. So just remember the Earth's flattened stationary, yeah. Oh, baby, baby, it's a flat world. The firmament's high, the water's level. Oh, baby, baby, it's a flat world. No one is able to get past the ice wall. Okay, that's it. I'm done. See you later. Take care. Bye bye. You still here? On the first part of the journey, I believed we lived on a globe. I was taught we were spinning through a galaxy and how the oceans all could curve. The first thing I met was 200 proofs that Earth is not a spinning ball. And try as I might, I looked at everything inside and I could find no curvature at all. You see, we live on a flat earth, Mother Earth is her name, and the Father's the sun up above. And the stars at night, they are the angelic lights, and we are here to make heaven on earth. La 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 la. Well, after 2 years researching flat earth truth, I'd watched hour and hour of YouTubes. I really wondered how we believe in a globe without an ounce of verifiable proof. And the stories it told of the deception that's flowed into the minds of the impressionable youth. You see, we live on the flat earth, it's an infinite plane. We're surrounded by Antarctic ice. We are the children of stars, we're not descended from Mars, and we came here to make paradise. La 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 la. Well, on the third part of the journey, the truth was plain to see. We've all been deceived from the cradle to grave, but the truth can set us free. Just remember, you're descended from God and you lived in your mother's womb. And when you grow up and step out from the world, you go to work in your father's fields. You see, we live on a flat plane, Mother Earth is her name, and the Father's the sun up above. And the stars at night, they are the angelic lights, and we are here to make heaven on earth. La 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 Just in the nick of time to have a drink. Did I say brink? I meant beer drink. Okay, well, I do have to go back to work now, so better finish off with this one. Comes a time you think it's spinning. Comes a time to see it's flat and still. Dawns a light, the truth's uplifting. Take that globe and smash it on the ground. Oh, this old world isn't spinning round. All the tall trees have been cut down. There comes a time you like I indoctrinated. They took our souls and they washed our brains out of space. It's science fiction. The earth is flat, we're living on a plane. Oh, this old world isn't spinning round. All the tall trees have been laid down. There comes a time. Don't you know the truth can set you free? There is no truth in heliocentricity. Just look up, see the stars at night. They haven't changed in 100,000 years. Oh, this old world isn't spinning round. All the tall trees have been laid down. There comes a time. There comes a time. There comes a time. Comes a time. There comes a That's like time, Lord. Ooh, doctor. That's wild. Okay, I've got one more left in me. It's my third last day here on the planet. Come on, bear with me. I just said planet. I wonder if my hair will keep growing when I lock myself into the hidden sanctuary that I can't escape from. Well, it's a mummification process. When they revive me, I'll be living in a better world, not this slave nation. Hello. Do you think we're on a spinning ball? Just not if you know Earth's flat. You know you've never felt the spin. Come on. come on now. You know that Earth's not moving round. If you really use your brain, it's a stationary plane. Relax, relax, relax. You're not floating around in outer space. It's just a basic fact. You know the Earth is flat. We're on a plane, the globe's receding. As you realize the great deception, that all of history's a lie, shedding years and years of indoctrination. When I was a child, I got educated. Was told I lived on a spinning ball. But I grew up, I investigated, and I couldn't find no proof at all. 'Cause I live on flat Earth. Okay, I see that when I'm spinning round, our feet are on the ground, not moving faster than the speed of sound. You know, you're not living on a spaceship. We're not insignificant. We're quite special. There is some pain as the globe's receding. A distant memory from another time. The Mother Earth is flat and infinite. We're star seeds in the fields of time. Now flat earth. Pardon me. Uh-oh. I don't know if I can sing that one. I really need to practice some of these. I'm going to do that one anyway. Fuck it. Longest video I've ever made. When I was just a young lad, couldn't wait to go to school. I had a keen thirst for knowledge and information. I could read and write before I was 5, even though I was left-handed. I knew what I meant, even if no one could understand it. My family all was scientists, all well-educated. When it came to trust in science things, we were all indoctrinated. But there's me, the white black sheep, with my LSD and greens. God help me. There was also mushroom. What the? What have I done with those chords? There was also mushrooms. That's how it goes. These are all works in progress, obviously, as you can see. From sunrise on the beaches and the tides pulled by the moon, I drank the Globe Aid from a silver sugared spoon. My indoctrinament, I could feel the spin. I was waltzing Coriolis and an Asian oracle of love. And can you tell me, doctor, why the earth feels flat and still? And why does none of NASA's footage ever seem quite real? How can we be on a globe if water's always level? Don't tell me. We live on a flat earth. It took me quite some time of investigation to undo the indoctrination from the globe. It was a war within yourself, and you didn't want to let your mates down, but you couldn't deny the truth. So you closed your eyes, cracked a beer and sparked the truth. And someone yelled out flat earth, and a bloke on Facebook swore. He said, you fucking flat-tard, why don't you read a book? I said I've read them all and more, yet I still can't find the curve. God help me. We live on flat earth. I can still see globe earth spinning, spinning through the the stars through brown eyes at the parallax. But we had our friends on Pluto and other goofy stuff. Time to grow up and say enough's enough. And the globe earth scientists never ever mention parallax. They say it takes 1,000,000 years for stars to move an inch. But I see the Southern Cross and the stars remain the same. God help me. We live on flat Earth. And can you tell me, doctor, why the Earth seems flat and still? Is it even possible we're a sim within a sim? What if the stars are watching us behind the bright spotlight? God help me. Nothing goes unseen. Okay, I'm done with that one too. I thought I was out of songs. Seems I still have one left. This is just terrible, isn't it? At least the beard hides the cancer that is doing me in, but let's see if this last one can see us out. It's my last chance to record all my songs, actually. This kid who got indoctrinated, he was forced to go to school, and when he's in the classroom, they taught he lived upon a spinning ball. He asked, why don't we fall off, and told him we've got gravity. Once there was this astronaut who took a little tankin on a journey to the moon, but when he gave an interview, it seemed that all he'd taken was mushrooms. Didn't care about Van Allen, belts were not discovered yet. But don't laugh, it gets worse than that. science and your perspective. How can we be a planet when water's always level? Yeah, buggered that one up, as you do. These are the most worstly written out songs I've ever seen. I mean, that's my writing. I know it's upside down, but it's bloody terrible, isn't it? No wonder these ones are bad. Can't sing it. Well, there you go. That's my Flat Earth collection after all these years. Ridiculous, isn't it? It takes so long to write out just one of them. What's really weird though is that the one video I was looking to debunk, the one about the Flat Earth proofs, the 10 Flat Earth ones, so easy to debunk. It was going to be fun to do. It doesn't show up in any of the YouTube searches. I had to look for some time through Facebook itself, looking for the last person I saw leaving a link. I thought, oh god, that one's still going around. I'm going to do a proper debunking of it. And of course, buggered if I know where I saw it, because I didn't. Well, because when you look at it on your phone and you click on it, it's not like when you find it on your laptop where you can say, okay, I can just leave that tab open and come back to it. As soon as you click the back button, you've lost the bloody thing. Then of course you go and look through 50 other things that you got to do, and you never get back to where you were going to be in the first place. And that's the story of my life. Fun, fun, fun. Anyway, take it easy, and don't forget, the Earth is flat, but the moon's like an egg. It really is. So yeah, bye. Let's not stop. Where's the frickin' stop button? Still recording. I can copy link. What if I hit the X? What will that do? Yes, that's what I want to do. Stop streaming. Okay, see ya.